Ladies and gentlemen, Skip Bayless ruined that perfect head of hair of his, and at the very same time challenged you all to go to the ALS website and donate. Very good deed, my friend. How did it feel?
My hair has not recovered, Stephen A. I'm having a bad hair day because my follicles were frozen.
Your follicles were frozen. Stephen A. Smith.
Your hair
looks fine.
has looked worse. Yeah. It has looked worse. So it's recovering. It's recovering. And like I said, you challenged our listeners, our viewers rather. I'm doing the same. Gonna make our donation today, so
I made mine last night.
Very good, gentlemen. Very, very, very much a good way to start this show. I've also made a donation. I'm glad everyone here has decided to participate. So we don't forget it. Even though the Ice Bucket Challenge is fun, we want to make sure we stay focused and keep our eyes on the prize. Carrie Champion here with Skip Bayless. Stephen A. Smith is in Philly. Stephen A., how are you this morning? I didn't like how much you were laughing during Skip's segment there, during his challenge. You were laughing a little too hard. It
was funny. It was funny. But he did it, and I'm proud that he did it. By the way, I saw T.O. last night, told him that you did the Ice Bucket Challenge, the Rock Nation. Rock Nation had an event at the Barclays Center. Derek Jeter was in the house. I got to see somebody I idolize, of course. But T.O. was there dropping jump shots and trying to dunk on people. I told him you accepted this challenge as well. He said thank you.
All right, all for a good cause. Coming up on the show today, former Washington tight end Chris Cooley will join the desk. He does not want to see the Redskins change the name. We find out why. Plus, RG3 not backing down and has a message for his critics. But first, let's talk about the preseason game last night. Steelers. Eagles, 31-21. Eagles get the win. The biggest headline of the night, outside of the fact that the Steelers did not look good, was that Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount, their two running backs cited for marijuana possession, played in the game.
That conduct is detrimental to our efforts. They'll be dealt with appropriately. From my perspective, in terms of their participation tonight, I didn't view it as punishment to send them home, to be quite honest with you, to not play in this preseason game. I'd rather them play more than anticipated than to remove them from the game. So that's why we took the stance we took tonight. Obviously, we got some things to do regarding the matter moving forward, but not a lot to say regarding it at this point in time.
All right, Mike Tomlin always being honest and very strong comments there. Stephen A., what do you make of him letting them play in the game last night?
Well, it's Mike Tomlin. And so I respect his decision because I know he's an individual that's all about accountability. I completely support him on this. I understand where he was coming from because obviously the temptation is to keep them off the field or whatever. But it's a preseason game, so how much are you really punishing them? From the sound of what he was saying, the way I interpreted it as was giving them the night off from a preseason game was sort of like giving them a break. And who's to say they deserve it? Let them feel the pinch when it really, really counts, Skip Bayless. Make sure they miss a regular season game or two. Support them getting suspended. Reek them through the coals. Do whatever you need to do, but make sure when you do it, it counts. And the reason why I'm comfortable in taking that position is because of one sentence that Mike Tomlin said, and that was this: they will be dealt with. I believe him. It's just that simple to me.
You know what? You make a good case to open the show. But I'm going to stand by mine. I'm a Mike Tomlin fan also. But I must tell you, as I sat and watched the opening of that game last night, I thought it just looked and felt wrong for those two to be allowed to play, albeit in a third preseason game. Not a huge deal, but a deal nonetheless. Stephen A., I must say I was surprised and a little disappointed, maybe going beyond Mike Tomlin, up to ownership, to the Rooney family, to to Dan Rooney, and to Kevin Colbert, the GM. I thought down through the ranks, the message would get sent that we are going to send a message tonight. This will not be tolerated, and they will not be allowed to play tonight, preseason or not preseason, just because you have to take some kind of stand, even a little stand. Yet I must credit Darren Woodson, analyst we often have on the show here, former Dallas Cowboy. On the 6 o'clock Sports Center, he called this. And when he said it, I was shocked. But Darren predicted that Mike Tomlin would say, no, I'm going to punish them by playing them deep into the game. And both players, both running backs, played into the fourth quarter of a preseason game. So congrats to Deron, but to me, I don't get that as punishment. To me, the punishment would have been the shame of having to sit home. You know, you can say, well, you can't let them out of playing in a preseason game. That'll be like a break. No, it'll be shame, because it'll be national shame. It'll be shame in Pittsburgh that you two guys got forced to sit home on your couches and watch this preseason game. Now, to Mike Tomlin's credit here, he has a football team to worry about. This was the dress rehearsal preseason game, as we all know. They were going to put a lot of stock in it. And unfortunately for Mike Tomlin, he got caught with both of his running backs. And they're betting the house on these two running backs. Thunder, as I call them, and Thunder. Like a little more thunder. It's not thunder and lightning, but it's two big bruising backs. And both of them get busted for marijuana possession. So he's in a bad way, because if you do leave both of them home, you also punish your football team, who would be handicapped to try to go through a dress rehearsal game with neither running back. I don't know what you'd do. Little Dree Archer would have to play a little bit of running back, and he's more of a slot receiver. So, again, I get it that Mike Tomlin was in a quandary. I appreciate what you said about his final line. They will be dealt with, and I'm sure they will. But it knocked me back on my couch, man, when I saw that they were both being allowed to play, and to play a whole lot, and to play into the fourth quarter.
Well, let me say this. You know, I get where you're coming from, and I don't necessarily, I don't totally disagree with it. I would have liked to have seen Mike Tomlin and the Steelers organization make both guys stand front and center and answer questions instead of ducking out and evading it, at least on the part of Le'Veon Bell. I think they should have been made to stand up before the reporters and answer questions as to their, as to their stupidity, because it was nothing but stupidity. But let's also acknowledge that, I shouldn't say nothing but, because it was also disrespectful to Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin, not just to find yourself in this situation, but consider this, Skip. They got pulled over by a cop on a motorcycle who said they drove by him and he could smell the weed from while he was sitting there on his motorcycle, which is why he ultimately pulled them over. Skip, where were they going? They were on their way to the airport for the Steelers game against the Eagles last night. So let me get this straight. You're about to hop on a plane. I assume, I don't know, but I assume it's on the team plane, and you're flying, and the coach is going to be there. So you're getting high en route to the game, en route to the airport, en route to a plane ride where your coach is going to be on it. You didn't even have the decency to wait until you landed and tried to sneak in and get it in and be away from the coach before you saw him the next day or something. Oh, no. You are on your way to the plane where ostensibly the coach is going to be, and you're getting high in the middle of the afternoon off some weed, knowing that you're probably going to see the coach. I don't know how much more disrespectful that can be.
I don't either.
Or how stupid that can be. So those are the kind of details. And I don't want to hear Roger Goodell feeling the need to wait 10 months like he did with Dwayne Bowe, according to John Clayton, or getting suspended for the following season. Yep. You suspended Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger didn't get arrested, didn't get indicted, didn't get anything.
Good point.
He was suspended for 6 games. They ultimately reduced it to 4.
Yep.
There was no waiting period or grace period then. Why should there be with this here? They should be dealt with immediately.
All right. Given all that you just said, I have a question for you. You grew up a Steelers fan. You have great respect for the organization and the head coach, your favorite head coach in all of pro football. No issues there.
Yeah.
This is an exemplary cornerstone franchise. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
This is the family that gave us, as you pointed out, I believe yesterday, the Rooney Rule came from the Rooney family. Given that backdrop, given how much respect that I, from a distance, have for this franchise, this cornerstone exemplary NFL franchise, Did it not send a little bit of a weird message last night that the franchise seemed to think it wasn't that big a deal? And again, that could be unfair of me, but that's how I took it. Like the franchise was sitting back, not that they're weighing this in, but we all know that marijuana has been completely legalized in 2 United States, okay? 2 states, and 23
Colorado
states.
and Washington.
23 states have approved the use of medical marijuana. So it almost came across to me like the Pittsburgh Steelers were saying, it's not that big a deal in today's climate.
By letting them play?
Well, yeah, by letting them play, it came across like, we're not going to take much of a stand. I get it that it's only a preseason game, but this was nationally televised on the NFL Network. Okay. And when I tuned in, even though Darren Woodson had warned me on 6 o'clock Sports Center, and I was, Darren, you're way out on a limb on this one. I'm not buying it this time, big guy.
Right.
I fully expected both would not play. They might dress, they might be made to stand on the sidelines in some shame, but they would not get in the football game. And again, we know that Mike went the other way and tried to punish them by playing them a whole lot in preseason game number 3. How do you respond to that, Stephen A?
How I respond to that is simple. I don't have an issue with Mike Tomlin because Mike Tomlin would not have made that decision if it were not for the Steelers hierarchy, their organization.
I agree.
So I look at the organization and I say, I agree with you if indeed they elected to make that decision. If, however, they wanted to follow up the actions of Commissioner Roger Goodell and they're waiting for him, which a lot of teams tend to do, then I can't hold them but so accountable for that. As it pertains to the players and the organization coming across as it not being that big of a deal, I certainly wouldn't accuse the Steelers organization of that. I think that's a bit excessive. I think that they've shown throughout history that they're more conscientious than most organizations within the NFL when it comes to any issue. And so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in that regard here. But what I will say is this. Ultimately, the onus is on the players. Because let me tell you something. No matter how it is, regardless of the fact that it's legal in Colorado and the state of Washington, regardless of the fact that 23 other states have strongly considered it from a recreational perspective, and we'll learn what their rulings are coming down the pike. In the end, it is not legal in the city of Pittsburgh, the state of Pennsylvania. The players know that. And so if you do something along those lines, you are violating the law. If you violate the law, you're going to be on the police blotters. And I don't know any organization that has come to the conclusion that a player being on the police blotters is something that's beneficial to their franchise. These players knew it, and they elected to violate the law, to disrespect their coach and the organization, and to sully their name. And they should be ashamed of themselves for doing so. It ultimately is on LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell. It's on them.
All right. Listen, again, as being reported, if there is any punishment issued by the NFL, it's unlikely that it will happen this season. Let's move on and get into the nuts and bolts of the game last night. Last night, Nick Foles was 19 for 29, 179 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, while Ben Roethlisberger, 15 of 24, 157 yards, a TD and a pick. The Eagles look good on both sides of the ball, and the Steelers struggled. Big Ben looking for chemistry with his offense, and he had a hard time against the Eagles' first-team defense. Stephen A., you watched the game, and just from your assessment, albeit preseason, which team do you think will have the better season?
I think it's clearly the Eagles because I think that the Eagles, it wasn't just that they ramrodded, stomped, and embarrassed the Pittsburgh Steelers last night. Up 17-0 at halftime, up 24-0 at one point. Giving the Steelers trouble, their offense trouble with third and fourth stringers for crying out loud. At least that's how it seemed. I was incredibly disappointed with the Steelers offense. They seemed to be out of rhythm, out of sync. Nothing seemed to be going right. Ben Roethlisberger was overthrown. He was underthrown. He was throwing behind guys. He wasn't given much time to throw the football. It was like he was thrown in a phone booth. The offensive line didn't show up. Blount and Bell didn't show up to provide any kind of running threat. The wide receivers, Brown, Wheaton, and those boys just seemed to be nothing. Heath Miller caught a touchdown pass, but that was after they were down 24-0. And the Philadelphia Eagles just made the Steelers look like they were in over their heads. The Philadelphia Eagles had been struggling this preseason in some respects, but they showed up last night. They scored on 3 of the 6 possessions against the Steelers. Nick Foles looked impressive. LaShawn McCoy, Shady McCoy, was doing his thing. The Philadelphia Eagles seemed to me to just outclass the Steelers. And when you combine that with so many question marks about the NFC East, and you look at the AFC North and see Cincinnati and Baltimore, not so much Cleveland, I'm just of the mindset that the road to prosperity is going to be significantly more difficult for the Steelers than it's going to be for the Eagles this particular season, because as far as I'm concerned, the only team that the Eagles have to worry about in the NFC East is the Washington Redskins, and that's assuming RG3 and those boys are ready to go. I see nothing to worry about with the Giants, and I certainly see nothing to worry about with the putrid, pathetically defensive team known as the Dallas Cowboys.
I can't disagree with much of your assessment about what we saw last night, especially in the first half. But I'm going to disqualify everything I saw last night. I'm going to give the Steelers a little break here because I found last night almost impossible to evaluate from their perspective, because I firmly believe, as I mentioned yesterday on the show, that team, that locker room was shook up by this double marijuana bust of its 2 Thunder and Thunder running backs. I don't think that team was ready to play any kind of football game, especially a third dress rehearsal preseason football game. And Stephen A. Smith, as much as I like Ben Roethlisberger, to my eye, that was the worst half of football I've ever seen that man play. I mean, ever, even including his rookie year when he was more of a game manager going into his second year, game manager. I didn't even recognize the man. Like you said, overthrew, underthrew, threw it in the dirt, threw it out of bounds, threw it here, there, everywhere. I didn't know what he was doing because he didn't seem to know what he was doing. And they let him play, as you know, into the third quarter. And finally, he got some rhythm going in a third quarter drive, and they got it in the end zone against Philadelphia's backups. So I'm going to disqualify all of the above. But I'm also going to throw this out. I told you yesterday I still have some questions about that aging Pittsburgh defense, again, with the 2 players over 30 in the secondary and a front 7 that got annihilated against the run last year. They were 21st overall against the run. Last night they gave up 182 rush yards. I know it's just a preseason game, but that's a bad sign. And now let's look at the Eagles. If you'd asked me this question 24 hours ago, I would have said Pittsburgh was going to be the better team. Now, what are my issues with Philly? And I'm going to disqualify what they did against a shook-up Pittsburgh team last night. But let's start with Jeremy Maclin. He has become increasingly important this year, as you well know, because there is no more Deshaun Jackson. Jeremy's coming off the ACL reconstruction in his right knee, and right away, can we see that highlight?
We're showing it now.
Oh, we got it. Okay. Man, I got shook up watching that hyperextension. Whoa, what are you doing, Jeremy?
I was scared. Yep.
Woo! I thought, that looks terrible. Yet, even though there's the Pittsburgh players pointing, like, come and get him, like he's going to have to be hauled off. He got up, walked off, came right back in, and ran a route and caught a pass. So I'm going to assume he's going to be okay, but that was the same knee that underwent surgery, and I'm not sure how healthy he will stay all year. It might be a little give and take on that knee. So will he be quite as dangerous as Deshaun was? I think they will miss Deshaun Jackson. Nick Foles got off to a shaky start last night, but once he found his rhythm, it was all with dinks and dunks. Little swing passes to Shady and pop passes to the tight ends. And if he can keep doing that, he'll be okay. I don't see 27-2 this year, 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. But I do see an improved Philly defense. I see a team that will rival the Redskins in the NFC East. I think they'll fight it out for the top spot. I'm not saying that Philly's a world beater, and I'm going to throw out some of what I saw last night as far as Philly's potency goes, because I think it was against the Steelers, who were psychologically reeling.
Because of Thunder.
Yes.
Thunder.
Well,
right.
You can call them psychologically reeling all you want to, but with the young boys that they got on the defensive side of the ball, I expected to see some speed. I didn't expect them to be getting people running by them looking a little bit slow and stuff like that. It's one thing where you just seem out of your mind, but they looked slow, and I'm concerned about that.
Yep, you should be.
31 penalties were called in the Eagles' 31-21 win over the Steelers on Thursday night. There have been 787 penalties called so far in the preseason. That's just about 23 per game. Last preseason, there were 16 penalties called per game through week 3. So that's where we are. We're at week 3, preseason. Let's break this down, Herm, and I have a graphic up. Coach Herm Edwards here to help us understand what is happening. Will this continue during the season?
No. Points of emphasis was on illegal chuck, illegal use of hands. Remember this, too. They added another official in the preseason, so that was another set of eyes. Also remember this. More teams have gone now at this point in time in the preseason to bump and run, copying the Seattle Seahawks, how they had played.
Okay.
A lot of these guys are young players. Now, last night, not so much. There were veteran guys out there. 24 for the Pittsburgh Steelers got called about 2 or 3 times. Okay,
yes, he did.
You know, right? And so, but I think what will happen is generally what these officials do. They'll huddle up here at the end of the last preseason game and look at all the tape of what they're calling and how they're going to call it. This was an emphasis. Why? Because of what happened in the Super Bowl. This is the Peyton Manning rule.
Oh, okay.
It's the Peyton Manning rule.
Oh.
This happened a while back prior to this season when Peyton played New England. And they couldn't get away when he was with the Colts. And all of a sudden, they said, you know what? We got to get more tighter on this rule. This rule was implemented in 1978. I came in the league in 1977. So I played under this rule when it was first implemented in 78. And so it used to be the college rule where you could hit the guy anywhere you wanted. Then when 78 came, they said 5 yards, and they kind of massaged it. But you see it constantly being massaged according to how this thing plays out. But right now they've gone back to enforcing a little bit more. They're trying to show the players, hey, we're going to call it, but you can't have 31 penalties in a football game.
31.
Not good for anybody.
Yeah.
Not good for our game.
So
Our game's a 3-hour game, so
exactly.
They will do something. The players will adjust. It'll get fixed.
Okay.
So you don't think it's the Seattle Seahawks rule? You think it goes back to the Peyton Manning rule?
In the Super Bowl.
Well, last time, 2 times we talked about it, Peyton Manning's been involved.
Yeah.
This team.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's Peyton's rules.
Okay.
I'm just saying the teams he played on, and then after it was kind of like, well, you know what? We got to get back to enforcing this rule. They're carrying these guys past 5 yards. They're hitting them at 7 yards. They use it. I mean, some of the stuff I watched last night was almost ridiculous.
Okay, but Coach, you say the reason why this won't continue is because, one, there was a new set of eyes in the game.
Yes, there was
bump and run.
Yeah, they added another
copying the
official.
Seahawks.
Right.
And you think a lot of these players are young and they don't know what they're doing.
Yes, exactly.
So that's why we don't see that.
No, you're not going to. Our game can't be stopped like this. I mean, this game, even though Philadelphia beat up on Pittsburgh last night, and I kind of agree emotionally Pittsburgh had been out of it, but still they hadn't been able to stop the run either. No. That's a concern a little bit. But here again, when you watch that game last night, there were some fouls called away from the play. I'm talking about away from the play. Had nothing to do with the play. The one guy, the quarterback, and this is where the official, I thought, blew it. When the quarterback leaves the pocket, you have the ability to push receivers out of bounds. Okay. He pushes the guy out of the end zone, he throws a flag on him. Now, I'm like, obviously officials don't know the rule, for one, because when he leaves the pocket, he becomes a runner. And when you're taught as a defensive back, when that guy's around the end zone line, you push him out.
Yeah.
You push him out of bounds.
That's it.
Then throw the ball.
Stephen A., your take.
Well, first of all, here's the bottom line. I think that we should be thanking the Seattle Seahawks because I think that some of the modifications that we're witnessing taking place, I think they're going to be the ringleader. They're going to be perceived as the ringleaders of it, and I love that. Obviously, there's a 43.7% increase in terms of total penalties. When you look at it, what it went to from 756 penalties so far this preseason compared to 526 last year. There's a 230 additional penalties being called. We see all of that. We know it's about illegal contact and defensive holding. But the thing about it is that how do you offset that? If you bump and run, then you're stalling or you're sort of serving as an impediment to somebody's path in terms of their receiving routes, which is what you're trying to do when you hold or whatever the case may be. So something's going to have to give when it comes to the NFL. Either you're not going to call these ticky-tack holding penalties or you're going to allow for more bumping and running, which is what the Seattle Seahawks obviously figured out would work for them. My point is that I like the bump and run. I like teams being allowed to get physical. I think it's important that we speak out about this because there has to be some level of fairness accorded to defensive players. It can't be all about facilitating things for offensive players. You got to be careful about the helmet. I saw a guy, last night, his head, he might get penalized for that. He might get fined for that. But it was a shoulder shot. But his head still ended up, his helmet still ended up hitting one of the one of the Steelers helmets. You just look at stuff like that and you say this stuff is getting a bit ridiculous. But in the end, I think the ultimate thing that will help really reduce these penalties, Coach Skip, is that they said that the games are 5 minutes longer. NFL doesn't want to be associated with the same problem Major League Baseball is having. These games cannot be allowed to get longer under any circumstances. I saw Greeny this morning on Mike and Mike showing the increase spanning decades in terms of the amount of time it took to complete a baseball game. The NFL doesn't want to be a part of that kind of discussion. They don't want us sitting on the airwaves talking about how these games have been stretched and elongated and it's going longer and longer and longer. They don't want that. They want to make sure that they keep that to a minimum. So I think because of that, all of this stuff is going to go away. I don't think they're going to get away with being this excessive with their penalty calling come the regular season. Might the first couple of weeks or so, but I think ultimately it will calm down, especially if we all continue to make noise about how it's disrupting the flow of the game itself and stretching it a little bit too long.
I'm not so sure you're right about that. And to your point that you were making, I wrote this down last night on my little notepad, and I wrote it down for my first point to make to Coach. I felt last night like I was watching the Yankees and Red Sox play because they are notorious for stepping out of the box. Fits and starts. It takes forever to watch those two teams play a baseball game. It's going to be your basic 4-hour, 9-inning game. And you're going to drift off occasionally because there's not enough action between pitches. It's just step out, and this was stop. And you know how much I love my football, my National Football League. I love to watch preseason football. I'm looking for the young players to flash. And I was drifting off last night. My mind was wandering because every play had a phantom foul involved, as you point out, where I couldn't even see it on the TV screen. Then we'd see a replay. They called that way over there on that guy? Really? Seriously? And again, Stephen A. referred to it as ticky-tack, and I agree. I think it's ticky-tack. The rules say it's a foul, right? The way they are enforcing the rule, point of emphasis, those are all fouls that need to get called. So, Coach, you got to help me here because they're playing a dangerous game with these officiating crews because you're going to officiate it this way all the way through the preseason, and then come opening Sunday, you're going to send out a directive. I guess they're all going to get a memo. Back off. How do you back off exactly? Well, because these calls are tough to make.
They're very tough, and these guys are put in a tough situation, especially the judges that watch the back end. And remember, there was another set of eyes. That has something to do with it, too. That set of eyes won't be there when the regular season starts. But I think they look at this like anyone else. They see it. They see under what they're calling. And right now, these officials have been told, you just throw the flag. We'll discuss this at the end of the preseason. Okay. And we'll talk about the common sense. Now, does that make any sense when you look at this on tape as an official? And you'll go, no, it doesn't. Well, I understand I had to throw the flag because it was past 5 yards. Did the quarterback look in the direction of that receiver, first of all? To me, that's the key.
Yep.
When a quarterback goes back, everyone's watching the quarterback. Everyone watches the quarterback. You watch the guy. He plays with the ball. Is he looking over there? No. Is this guy involved in the route? No. Well, then don't throw the flag. It's real simple.
Yeah.
And you can warn the player, say, if he looks over here, that's a foul.
Well,
that's a foul.
Well, I'm not sure about that, Coach. Let me explain why.
Yes.
If you have a Peyton Manning, if you have a Drew Brees,
sure.
If you look at some of the great quarterbacks in NBA history, Coach, what are one of the strong skill sets they have? They can look off a defender. They can sit here in this way, and then all of a sudden they turn this way and they fling the football at the last possible second. So because the ball ends up in a certain direction and it's away from a play, it doesn't mean that you don't call the foul if indeed there is a foul, because with the elite quarterbacks in the game, they're specialists at looking off a cornerback, a safety, etc. They know what they're doing, and they switch off. And so when you have that going on and you have that capability, you can't just sit there and say, well, the ball ultimately wasn't thrown there, so why should that be called? You got to take everything into consideration, what's going on the field until the whistle is blown, because with elite quarterbacks, they can come to you at the last minute. Joe Montana was a specialist at that himself. That's why he was one of the greatest. You can look off a defender, come right back at the last second and hit somebody that didn't even seem to be a part of the play. But the whistle, the game is still going on. You can't do that.
I agree. I think you're missing the point here. The point is this. Common sense has to be ruled.
Right.
There's a point in time in a football game, to be quite honest, Stephen A., and I'm not just trying to say this because I'm sitting here, but I actually played the game.
You did.
And I've been on the field. There's a penalty every play. Okay, let's get that perfectly clear. There's 22 guys out there. There's a foul. You can call a foul every play if you want to be quite honest. Okay, that's the game of football. It's a game of who makes the most errors at the end of the day. All right? So you look at this game last night and you go, okay, there was 31 penalties and they accepted 27 of them. There was 12 penalties total that created first downs. All right? So I get all that. But it comes to a point where these guys are professionals as well, these officials, and they know they've been in football long enough. And you're right, the quarterback can look over there and he can look over there. Are you impeding the guy that's trying to run the route the ability to finish the process of what he's trying to do at the end of the day? Okay? And
Coach.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm aware that you played the game.
Yes.
I'm aware that you coached the game.
Yes.
I certainly am aware that you know more than me.
No, I'm not saying
that.
that.
I must ask a question.
Yes, sir. Ask it, please.
No, I appreciate it, but you do know. You do know more football than me, damn it. You do.
No,
I'm good with it. But here's the question, Coach. Thank you very much. All right. I appreciate it, Skip. Thank you very much. But here's my question, fellas.
Yes.
Coach,
yes.
Your association with the game all these years, is this the first time you've had this complaint?
No.
Haven't they been? Hasn't there been a ticky-tack? I mean, when you look at the game of football and how, like you said, there's a violation or a foul on every play. This ain't the first year. This ain't the fifth year. You could have said this. So what's new now?
No, and nothing is new, and you're right. But what I'm saying is this. Every year we always seem to look at fouls, and this is always discussed. Yes. Whether it's protected, the cut rule, the chop block, all these things come into play. But in the preseason, the emphasis is on that. They're trying to make the players understand, we're looking at this, guys. Now, these guys are going to go back, and like you said, Stephen A., it's a 3-hour game. This football, it's built for, it's the best game built for television.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's marvelous. Sure. It's a 3-hour game. People get that. They're going to look at this and go, look, we don't want to be the guys all of a sudden to take over the game, the guys in the stripes.
Yep.
And every time we turn around, there's a flag being called. Yep. Look, and they know who the good defensive backs are, by the way, too.
Yeah, they're aware.
You don't think you have conversations with those guys? When I was in pro football playing, hey, I knew that guy's name. The back judge, I knew his name. And I would actually have conversations with him. And as soon as the game would get started, the conversation would work like this. I'd maybe have the guy and go down the field with him a little bit, and he'd say, hey, 4-6. I said, what's that, sir? He says, I could have got you on that one. I said, okay. I just want to know the rules. Let me know the rules, and then I can adjust my game. Okay? That's kind of what happens.
Right.
Okay, let me cut to the chase.
Yes.
Is it possible, because I'm all for offense having the advantage over defense, even though you were a cornerback, we all want to see points scored and Peyton light it up.
Yes.
Okay, that's what we're talking about here, right? A lot of people don't want to see the Seahawks just annihilate receivers by intimidating them, by pushing the rules. And it looked to me like last year, Seattle would go into a game thinking, we'll foul on every play.
Yep.
We'll clutch and grab. We'll do, and maybe they'll call one or two, but they ain't going to call it every time, and we're going to get away with it, right? Okay, is it possible that all of this attention will ultimately just be focused this year on the Seahawks games, where they will bear the brunt of the point of emphasis?
Well, I know this. If you look at Seattle, they were a team that were highly penalized because they play a lot of bump and run. That comes with the territory. You know that. You're going to get more penalties called on you when you play that style of defense. And you live with that. They lived with it last year. They had over 126 fouls. They still won the Super Bowl. Now, so if they get 130 this year, 135, they really don't care because that's how they're going to play.
Well, what if they get 165?
Coach?
Yes, sir.
Well, we can't finish the game.
Won't be that many, I promise.
Skip, Coach.
Yes,
the
sir.
only thing that I want to say about that is then the ingredient to, the remedy for this whole situation is to go out there and not just to find skilled players, but to find some rough riders with the heart to deal with it. Because the Denver Broncos didn't get spanked because they were inferior skilled-wise. They got spanked because they got their heart snatched out of their chest.
True.
And they looked like a bunch of scaredy cats. That's what happened. I don't care what you legislate in the game of football. There is little to nothing that you can do, nor should you do about that. Football is a man's game, and it requires that men show up every week, not sit there and regress and turn back time to being little boys when they're going up against men in the biggest game of the year, which was the Super Bowl, which is exactly what the Denver Broncos did outside of Peyton Manning. They showed up and got punked. That's what happened. That's not the NFL can't do anything to legislate that.
No, and you said it correctly, and I'll say it again. It's the Peyton Manning rule.
Our team spent a lot of time over the last year, and especially the last few months, traveling around and visiting different Native American tribes and different reservations and talking to them and seeing how they feel about the name Redskins. It's been interesting calling because I've traveled now to 6 or 7 reservations and talked to 15 different tribes. People don't care. They care about health care. Native Americans care about health care issues. They care about drug and alcohol issues. They care about education issues for their kids. They don't care that one tribe is speaking for every tribe, which is over 500, saying this is a problem.
Our next guest spent his entire NFL career as a tight end with Washington, and as you heard, he doesn't believe the Redskins name is a true issue in the Native American community based on research, he says, that was conducted. We welcome Chris Cooley to the desk. Chris, you say that it was an honor to wear a Redskins uniform, and we appreciate that, but I want to make sure that we're clear here. Do you believe the Redskins name should be changed?
Thank you first for having me. In no way do I believe the name should be changed, and it came up and was really prevalent over the last year and maybe handled inappropriately at first by the team saying, we will not change this name. After that, myself and Gary Clark and Mark Mosley and our owner and multiple alumni have gone out and tried to make an educated decision on whether or not this is a derogatory term, whether or not it's even an insensitive term. And the only way we could do that was by spending time talking to Native Americans throughout our country. And what we've done is visit tribes and meet with tribal councils and shake hands and talk to people on reservations and see how they feel. And to be completely honest with you guys, first, you cannot tell someone that they're not offended. You can't. I'm sorry. If someone's offended, they are offended by something. But you have to decide who's offended and how many are offended. And my time on the road, I've spoke to at least 2,000. I've interviewed on camera over 100 Native Americans. And I honestly have not had one person say, I think you should change the name. I've in fact had people say, we're really proud of our legacy, we're proud of our history, we're proud of what your team represents. And we don't want someone else telling us, this is what's best for you as a Native American people. Tribes are different. They're sovereign entities. They're different groups of people. The Navajo aren't the Blackfoot. The Blackfoot aren't the Cherokee. They're all very different. And for the most part, when the majority of everyone I talk to says, we don't feel offended by this at all, we're actually proud of it, I understand that it isn't insensitive.
Some people take the train of thought that if one person or one group is offended, then it's offensive. Your response? Then
we should have anarchy because a lot of people are offended by our government. A lot of people don't like the way things are run in our country. Santa Claus has an 82% approval rating, so he should go away as well. He offends people. Everyone is offended by something. And like I said, you have to admit that they are offended. But the issue with the Redskins name is not that people are going to reservations and people are coming across Native Americans and calling them Redskin in a derogatory fashion. The issue is really more that it's a football team. Native Americans, for the most part, understand it as a football team. If we were to go out today in the restaurant and go to a restaurant and I said to you, Skip, there's a couple Redskins sitting over there having a beer, what would you say? You would associate it with football. And they do as well.
Stephen A.
First of all, you're always welcome on the show, Chris. No need to be nervous. You're entitled to your opinion, and we respect it. Let me get that out of the way first and foremost. But there's a couple of questions that I have to ask you, relatively poignant questions. Number one, at this moment in time, when you went out and did the research that you did, was that of your own volition or was that at the behest of Daniel Snyder?
Thank you for the question. I think that's a great question, and half was with Dan Snyder and with the team, and half was with myself. I've driven to reservations on my own to realize that this isn't a cherry-picked reservation where we know this group of people is going to believe the way we want them to believe. I have went to the Wind River Reservation in Riverton, Wyoming, and didn't tell anyone who I was and shook hands with everyone I could possibly meet and said, how do you feel? No one knew anything about what I was doing, and not one person there said, I'm offended. A lot of people even say, you know, I'm a Cowboys fan and I hate the Redskins, but I don't mind the name.
The other question that I had to ask you was, when we talk about Daniel Snyder and you talk about these reservations that you visited, have any of these reservations benefited monetarily in any way from Daniel Snyder?
I think one of the best things our ownership has done and our organization has done is become aware of the plight of Native Americans on reservations. When this began, Daniel Snyder said, I want to go out and I want to visit these people and I want to start to talk to them and see how they feel. And so he traveled to over 20 reservations. What he found is that they're in poverty. They have major issues on reservations. They have health care.
So that's a yes?
They have it. Not all of them have been helped. You have to ask them if you can help them. You have to sit down with their tribal council and say, can we actually help you? And some of the tribal councils don't want part of anything. They don't have a problem either way, but they say, if you help us, then we're going to take some grief from someone else. So some have been helped and some haven't. But right now there are a lot of fantastic things that we're doing to increase the awareness and increase the health care and the education and the of young kids on the reservations.
Fair enough. So as we sit here this morning, am I to understand and surmise that what you're saying is that, for the most part, Daniel Snyder's willingness to sit down with folks at these reservations and his willingness to address this issue head on by going to talk to them was simply out of the kindness of his heart and concern for them potentially being offensive? Is that what you're saying?
And yes, I am saying that. And to answer your question, have you heard anything publicly about the Redskins going and doing works, going and giving people money, bragging about helping different people?
Heard.
You really haven't heard much about it. You haven't heard much about it.
Not bragging, but we have heard about it. We have heard about it.
Daniel Snyder has an amazing charitable foundation that supports everyone in the D.C. area. The reach that has grown with what he's done as a philanthropist has grown to reservations. And look, he grew up from nothing. He went out and he said, it's a problem here, and I have the means to help a problem.
I only have one more question, Skip, and then I'll give it to you. Mike Wise for the Washington Post recently wrote a column that I found to be very, very interesting. And what it was highlighting is that while we talk about the Washington Redskins and people surmise that Prince George County and just the whole D.C., Maryland area is Redskins Nation, an $11 million practice facility was built by the folks in Virginia for where the Redskins practice. About $500,000 a year is given to the Redskins, to practice there for 2 or 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. I don't have the story directly in front of me, but essentially was that parts of obviously the state of Virginia itself, but parts of it, because not everybody, but parts of it, you're talking about folks hanging up Confederate flags and things of that nature and how they support Daniel Snyder and they're not interested in changing anything about the Redskins name or what have you. How comfortable, knowing some of the issues that exist within the state of Virginia, hearing about the support that segment of our populace gives to the local Redskins, how comfortable are you all, people like yourself and others who support Daniel Snyder and not changing the team's name, how comfortable are y'all with that level of support coming from them, some folks, a few folks, who don't appear to have any kind of sensitivity whatsoever to the plight of Native Americans on this issue?
As a team, we don't pick who we have as fans. We don't look out and say, there's a Confederate flag, let's go after this guy to say support the name. I think that's as insensitive as anything else to say that, well, these people have this belief that it's fine, so look at them, they're wrong. I look more in the name right now as what's going on to, let's say, the Wilpinett Redskins in eastern Washington, a high school on a reservation with over 90% Native Americans that in June voted as a high school in the midst of controversy to keep the name Redskins for their Native American high school. I look at people that I actually talk to that care, because I don't care, to be honest with you, how many white people who have never met or black people who have never met a Native American in the D.C. area say it is or it isn't racist. I think it's lazy. I think it's a joke. I think it's a political issue where we live. And I think it's a bigger issue when you actually talk to Native Americans when they say, this is what I believe. I don't really care what Confederate flag Joe says or doesn't say in D.C. because he can form his own opinion. And I don't care what anyone in the journalist world says, because if I'm which I am, a reporter, and I say I believe it should stay, then I'm called a racist. And I think that's insensitive. So people make choices as to not be called racist, to not be called insensitive, and just say, look, maybe it can change. That's the laziest answer of all time. I don't really care about the name, but maybe it's going to change. What are you talking about? You've said the name. Mike Wise has said the name Redskins for 30 years. So he's saying for the last 30 years he was insensitive, that he was bigoted towards the name. All of you guys have said the name Redskins for 30 years. And now all of a sudden you have an epiphany because 500 people in our country say, oh, we're offended.
Hold it. Now I got to stop you right there because you went too far. I get where you're coming from. But don't sit here and denigrate people within this profession or people who have a different opinion, because the impetus and the nucleus of their opinion, Chris, is the fact that a segment of our population appears to be offended. We know that we're not Native Americans. We had no problem saying Redskins. But it was when it was brought to the attention of the public at large that there are Native Americans out there who feel it's racist. That's when people stood up. Whether it's Mike Wise, whether it's Wilbon, whether it's anybody else that you want to point to within our profession. Now, I understand your point of view, and I get that point. But at the same time, it's wrong for you to be denigrating people you now call your colleagues and calling them lazy and all of this other stuff because they have an opinion based on yours. I didn't hear anybody calling Chris Cooley or anybody who thinks like Chris Cooley racist because he thinks otherwise. What I heard was there are Native Americans out there who are saying this is racist, and you have people like myself and Skip and others who acknowledge we're not Native American. They are, and if they're offended, then it's something that we need to pay attention to. There's no crime in that. There's nothing wrong about that.
Right, and if we're not going to denigrate, then we're not going to denigrate against a group of fans for the Redskins, which you would basically consider Confederate flag bearers.
All right.
And say that they're the ones.
Time out. You can respond to that in a second. Skip, I want to get you in here. I know you had some questions and you've been writing some notes. Can you address Cooley, please?
Okay, I want to be specific here. In your research, which I do respect, you say that you only found one small pocket, which is the tribe, the Oneida Indian Nation, correct? About consisting of around 500 members who take issue with the nickname Redskins, correct? That's all that you have found.
That is the major group that it has been outspoken, but to be honest with you, there are more people offended by the name, and there are people that are not Native Americans that are offended by the name. I can't.
So we're just talking about Native Americans here.
Yes, okay. There are others, but in where I've been, I can say that I have not spoken to anybody. And it was an interesting topic at first to go and ask someone how they feel, because
it's just hard for us to believe after all we've read and heard. And again, I'll be the first to admit I have not done any homework or research. I've not gone outside this building to talk to Native American tribes as you have. So it's impossible for me to believe that you interviewed, what, 1,000 Native Americans?
I've spoken to more than 1,000. I've interviewed over 100.
And not once in 1,000 did you get any pushback about the nickname, correct?
That's very correct.
Okay. All right. So I read a recent piece in the Monday Morning Quarterback, for which I have a lot of respect. And it says that it took the temperature of Native Americans from coast to coast, representing 18 tribes in 10 states, and found a complicated and nuanced issue here. What we did not find, says MMQB, is the quote-unquote overwhelming majority that Snyder and NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell have claimed support the name Redskins among Native Americans. So they've done their research, 18 tribes spread all the way across the United States, and they say that they did find negativity among many of the tribes, pockets in many of the tribes, that you didn't run across. So it's hard for me to know what to believe here. Do I believe this or do I believe your research?
Here's what I believe. I believe that the team holds the utmost respect for the term Redskins. We believe as alumni, we believe as an organization, we believe as current players that we're proud to be Washington Redskins. We play with integrity, we play with a never say die spirit, and that is all embodying what it is to be a Redskin. And as we go out and we talk to people, they have believed the same as us. There's been multiple events of research done, for the most part shows 9 out of 10 Native Americans say that they have no issue whatsoever with the name. No one's proven that research wrong over a large basis.
Okay, but wouldn't you say if even 1 out of 10 has a huge problem with it, then it should be considered a racist nickname? Because that's the way I've always operated with any minority in this country. If they have an issue, we should all have an issue, correct?
But is it 1 out of 10? And that's the question I want to ask you. And then what issue in America does 1 out of 10 people not have a problem with? I sat with the American Cancer Society, and they have a 97% approval rating. So there are people that don't believe that that's a good product.
It's just on the face, the name Redskins. I've always thought, and I grew up in what used to be called Indian Territory in the state of Oklahoma, 5 civilized tribes. I grew up thinking it was a racist nickname because of the name Redskins. And in the old cowboy Indian movies, it was always a topic of the Redskins. I'm sorry, I'm getting interrupted here, so I can't finish. Go ahead.
I just want to ask one last question, Chris. If the Redskins changed their name, what harm would it do?
It would harm the legacy of everyone that's ever been a part of the Redskins. What do you call Sonny Jurgensen? What is Sammy Baugh? When Doug Williams wears his Super Bowl ring that says Redskins, is he now a racist because he's wearing a racist term on his finger? Are you going to call Gary Clark a racist because he's proud to be a Washington Redskin?
Okay, wait, time out.
It harms the legacy of the team.
Welcome back to First Take. Chris Cooley still here with us, so we had to get a break in to pay the bills. Stephen A. Smith, you had a question for Chris.
Well, my question is that, first I'm going to make a statement. I think that, Chris, with all due respect to you, bro, you're being a bit disingenuous, man, because, I haven't heard anybody sit there and say the Hogs, Joe Theismann, Art Monk, Darryl Green, or anybody else would be racist just because they played for the Redskins, and as a result of that, if they support the name remaining the same, that's who they are. The argument is that some folks from the Native American community find this highly offensive. Whether it's Pine Ridge in South Dakota or someplace else, they find it offensive. And because with people like Skip and myself, the belief is that if somebody like that finds it offensive, then since we're not Native Americans, they are, and they're the ones who find it offensive, the name, you might need to consider changing the name. Now, whether you agree or disagree with it, that doesn't mean that anybody has tried to impugn the integrity of the Redskins organization. As a matter of fact, I've been on the record saying, look, I can't fault Daniel Snyder. The Redskins name existed long before he bought the team. It's now worth over $2 billion. It's a moneymaker. He's a businessman. If he doesn't want to change it, there are some people that's going to understand it. There's some people that's not. But you don't sit there and look at former players and think anything negative about them just because they support the name remaining the same. And I think it's wrong for you to give the impression that that's what people are trying to say about any players, including yourself, labeling you that way just because we would disagree with your opinion. Nobody has said that about y'all.
Well, I'll quickly address that, and then I think we'll move on because it's not only about the players, it's a bigger issue than that. But if, in fact, the name were to be changed, that means it's an admission of it being a derogatory term. And so if any of those players were to wear Redskins across their shirt, they are currently wearing a derogatory term, which, in fact, makes them at least insensitive. I don't see how there's any other way around that. If the name were actually to be changed, it's an admission of guilt of a derogatory term, which the team doesn't believe. Before we move on, what I really truly believe is that from every Native American tribe I've spoken with and met with, I've understood that this is a immensely proud people. They're proud of their culture. They're proud of their heritage. They're not afraid of who they are. They struggle to live at the ends of our country. They're given lands in God knows where. They have a hard life. And we just want to pass it off. Okay, we'll put a lot of money into our government and into saying politically we'll change this name. And that's where we'll spend our dollars. But we won't actually go 4 hours out of our way in Idaho to spend money on their reservation and address that these people exist and that these people have needs more importantly than saying the name of a football team.
All right. Chris Cooley, thank you for joining us. You can catch more with Chris Cooley, who will be co-hosting SVP and Russillo today with Scott Van Pelt, correct? 1 to 4?
I will. I'm excited for that. I love Scott.
I assume you may be talking about this. I'm not for sure.
I think I've had enough for today.
Yeah, you're full of it.
I appreciate you guys having me so much. It's always great to be here with you.
I commute from Schenectady to Manhattan. It's about a 6-hour round trip, but it's cool. My family loves Schenectady, and I love books on tape. It's a lot of time to spend driving alone. On the other hand, Schenectady is really close to the highway, so...
Life is a long drive. Make sure your car is along for the ride. Mobile Super Motor Oil is formulated to help prevent sludge and protect against wear. Mobile Super, for long engine life.
Bears at Seahawks, one of 5 preseason games tonight at 10 Eastern. It's Jay Cutler's arm taking on the Legion of Boom. So what do you expect from the Bears when they face the Super Bowl champs? Now, there's somebody on the show who supports a Commodore.
Yep, it's the year of the Commodore.
It is the year of the Commodore.
Yeah, did you see Jordan Matthews last night?
Year of the Commodore, Stephen A. I think he might disagree. What do you expect from the Bears when they take on the Super Bowl champs, Skip?
Stephen A. Smith, I know what I don't want to see from the Chicago Bears tonight. We know that a number of teams last year or so have gone up to Seattle for night games, San Francisco, New Orleans, I could keep going, and they have gotten their wills crushed. They have gotten their hearts snatched. They have gotten their psyches stomped. And even in preseason, I think the Legion of Boom and others on that roster take great pleasure in psychologically intimidating and annihilating teams just to make an early statement. Last year, we know that the Seahawks beat, this is just preseason, but they beat San Diego 31-10, and then they did a 40-10 on Peyton Manning and company. That was up in Seattle, and you can't tell me that that set the early tone for what we saw in the Super Bowl, and you love to go off about how they got their hearts snatched in that game. This year already in the preseason, Seattle did a 41-14 number on San Diego. So my point to you is, this is a big deal for the Chicago Bears as they go into especially the first half tonight, when I'm pretty sure it's going to be ones versus ones, starters versus starters. I'm bullish on the Bears this year. Not so sure about the defense, but I'm bullish on the offense, and I think they can win a whole lot of games just with their offense. We know that the Legion of Boom lies in wait tonight in Seattle. I think they would love to make a statement, if for nothing else because I've been mouthing off about my guy Jay Cutler, that they are going to stomp and bum rush Jay Cutler tonight just for fun, just to send another little message to the NFL. We are back, and we are just as bad as we were last year. So the point tonight is I want to see the Chicago Bears just play well in the first half, just hold their own. I'm not going to predict anything. I don't say that Cutler and company have to win the first half. They just have to be able to do some of the things they normally do against a good defense. And obviously this is a very good defense. But what you don't want to see tonight is the Bears trailing at halftime 24-0. So I'm just hoping that Jay Cutler, in the year of the Commodore, doesn't get turned into the rest of the Commodores.
The rest of the Commodores, the ones that we don't know about.
Ones we don't know about.
Like the Lionel Richie. Hi, I'm standing up. You caught me. Stephen A., to you.
I'm looking forward to the Chicago Bears getting checked. That's what I'm looking forward to. I know Brandon Marshall's a stud. I know Alshon Jeffrey is no joke. Had 89 receptions last year. Brandon had 100, even though he had lesser yards. But both of them are 1,200-plus yard receivers. Brandon, 1,200. Alshon Jeffrey, 1,400. Martellus Bennett, he's no joke. If he's not a distraction, he should be able to do some things. Matt Forte rushed for about 1,300 yards. We understand what the Chicago Bears are capable of if Jay Cutler shows up. But he's a Commodore that I think we'll be calling Lionel Richie to ask for him. Hello?
Okay.
Where are you?
He's no Lionel.
Where are you? And you know what? I'm just looking forward to the Seattle Seahawks defense sitting there looking at Chicago's 8th-ranked offense last year, 5th in the pass, and saying, what you got? Let's see it. Let's go. We ain't treating it like it's preseason. You boys are trying to come and take what we got. It might be a preseason game, but everybody's been talking about your offense. We know everybody talks about our defense. We're the Legion of Boom. Here we come. What you gonna do? And that's what I'm looking forward to, because I want to see what Trestman and Jay Cutler come up with. I want to see if Jay Cutler's going to show up. I want to see if he's going to wilt beneath the pressure that inevitably is coming his way tonight. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And I believe the game is in Seattle, Skip Bayless.
It is.
I believe that noise will be loud.
It will be.
I believe that they will be a bit disrupted. And we will see. Let me look at this schedule.
Look at it.
Do the Bears have Seattle on their schedule this year? Ah, damn. They lucked up. They don't have to play Seattle unless they meet in the playoffs. Too bad. I guess Seattle's going to have to deal with them tonight.
Are you suggesting Jay Cutler is not mentally tough enough to survive tonight in Seattle? Is that what you're suggesting, Stephen A?
It's a preseason game. He'll survive. He'll live to quarterback another day and play against somebody else. I just don't anticipate that he'll be impressive tonight.
So you'll be rooting against the Chicago Bears tonight, I suppose.
Excuse me, I wouldn't say rooting against them. But then again, that's fair because I do like the Legion of Boom more than I like Jay Cutler. I got love for Brandon Marshall. He just wear pom-poms when they come to Jay Cutler. He's not objective at all about Jay Cutler.
Okay.
He's completely lost. He's gone.
What I want to see tonight is, bless you, I want to see Martellus Bennett catch a couple of balls over the middle in the first half. I want to see Brandon Marshall catch a couple of slant routes basically over the middle against the Legion of Boom tonight. I think both those receivers are fully capable of making those catches. I think Mark Trestman will give them the opportunities to show the world they can make those plays against a great defense. And I don't throw that word around loosely.
Don't.
This is a great defense.
All right.
So I want to see the Bears show the Seahawks they can at least match up and hold their own for a half. I want to see a close game by halftime, and I want to see some yardage piled up by the Chicago Bears.
Okay, so in short, you want to see the year of the Commodore. He wants to see Lionel Richie tonight, Stephen A. That's what he wants to see out of Jay Cutler.
It might be a close game at that time, but it would be only because Seattle's offense ain't scoring. I'm saying I don't anticipate Chicago's offense doing anything against the Legion of Boom because I think they'll rattle Jay Cutler.
Don't let them give that to you.
I make no predictions tonight. I just want to see, and I don't use this word loosely, I want to see survival tonight.
Okay.
Psychological survival, where you can go to halftime locker room holding your head high.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Hey,
I'm so touched.
Give me bravo, Mr.
Survival.
Smith, for what happened to the 49ers and the Saints last year in Seattle. Do you remember those games? Was that bravo on your part?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, you love your 49ers.
Yes, I do.
What happened in Seattle? Did you bravo your 49ers?
Yeah, let them. Uh-oh.
Give me that.
No, I did not.
No, you
But
didn't because you couldn't.
The subject at
because
hand,
they got bum rushed.
Don't interrupt me. The subject at hand
annihilated.
is the Chicago Bears. That's the subject at hand is the Chicago Bears and your boy Jay Cutler, who you got faith in, and all he's been is a replica of Tony Romo.
Oh, boy.
Actually, worse than that, because Tony Romo has got better regular season numbers than him.
Okay.
And
Jay
that's saying
Cutler's
a lot.
a tough guy.
He's a good guy.
From Vanderbilt University.
Yeah, a year to come.
And unproductive.
Jackie Robinson West, the Illinois Little League team from Chicago, is now just one win away from becoming the first all-black USA team to make it to the World Series championship game since 1981. The team has been getting a lot of positive attention as it continues to advance. Major League Baseball commissioner-elect Rob Manfred spoke during the last night's game between the two inner-city teams, Philadelphia and Chicago, and why this is a step in the right direction. Here's the quote. With respect to baseball games, we try to take a position of neutrality. I have to tell you, a Philadelphia-Chicago matchup is pretty darn good. It's so wonderful when people turn on their televisions and they see people from very different socio-economic backgrounds in a setting like this. We've talked on the show before about a decline in African-American participation in baseball out of the Little League World Series. It seems that they're refuting our assumption, or at least that fact, that we believe there is a decline, especially with this team, Monet Davis. Stephen A., I ask you this first. Do you think this will bring African Americans back to baseball?
I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. I'm hopeful, but at the same time, I'm simply not sure because, you know, the attention span of kids, obviously, is very, very low. And when you look at the sport of Major League Baseball, where we see the time that it takes to complete a Major League Baseball game, it's increased, if not incrementally, certainly closer to exponentially over the last several decades. And so when you've got games taking 3 hours long, if it's tough for people like myself and Skip and others to sit down and watch a game, it's going to be tough for young kids to do the same. And then if it's tough for them to watch it, what's going to be the interest in going out and playing it? Not to mention the fact that, you know, we have a challenging situation for Major League Baseball because we have to have somebody in place, and we're hoping that's new Commissioner-elect Rob Manfred, that we have to have somebody in place that's going to really focus and zero in on appealing to a younger audience and finding a way to do that. Because Major League Baseball has had the problem. In the early 90s or so, the average age for fans watching Major League Baseball was 44.8. As of right now, it's over 54 years of age. So what that essentially tells you is that it's the same audience that was watching baseball before. They're watching it now. The same people that were spending money before is spending money now. But they haven't successfully gone about the business of ingratiating themselves with a younger audience the way the NFL has, and obviously the National Basketball Association has. And that's why people are surmising that Major League Baseball is going to be on the decline. Because the interest is going to wane significantly, and there's something that needs to be done about that. You've got reviving baseball in the inner city, along with other programs that Major League Baseball have involved itself in. So clearly it's a problem they recognize, and they want to do something to alleviate it. But what they've done, and I don't know how they can backtrack this, Skip, they've gone to the Dominican Republic and other places where you have dark-skinned individuals to play the sport of baseball, but you don't necessarily have African Americans, black folks right here in America. You haven't targeted that enough, apparently. So when we look at the black populace, we're confusing that sometimes with the African American populace. So to answer the question directly, I simply don't know if there's anything you can do about that, because it appears not to be in your best interest to do so, because some of the stipulations and the roadblocks that you have to endure in America when you're pursuing young talent, you don't necessarily have those impediments when you're getting dark-skinned individuals from other countries starving to come over here to Major League Baseball and play.
I'm with you in everything you just said, and I'm going to take one more step. Although I'm very hopeful that this is a very positive sign, a new sign, I fear it's more of a blip than a trend.
Oh.
And I'm going to tell you again, and I've told you this several times, I grew up through an era of Major League Baseball in which black stars dominated the sport. And in those years, the game of baseball, and I know it was to some extent in your childhood, the game of baseball was very important to the black community in the United States of America. And I was a St. Louis Cardinals fan, Bob Gibson, my favorite player, but I had Lou Brock, Kurt Flood, Bill White, and then do I need to mention Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Frank Robinson, Willie Stargell, Mudcat Grant, Vida Blue. I can go on and on and on. Black stars dominated through the 60s and into the 70s. Then what happened? Black and white kids discovered, oh, but football's a little more fun. It's much faster paced. It's a little more exciting. Basketball, much more exciting. Faster pace, faster road to fame and fortune in both sports. What happens to these kids as they get to high school? And they're about to approach those ages, 13, 14, 15. How big a deal is high school baseball in most high schools? Not a very big deal. Can you be the big man on campus or in the hallways playing high school baseball? Not really, right? Am I right about that?
No.
Was it a big deal in your high school baseball?
Yeah, I got you.
Are you with me? Okay.
Listen, I'm with you.
So, look,
go ahead.
This is my point all along has been, I do not for 1 second believe the sport of baseball or Major League Baseball is in any way racist here. I don't believe they're trying to shut out the African American kids in favor of cheaper talent from the Dominican or whatever. I just don't believe. I've never bought that. I just think kids, black, white, of all colors, just said, hey, this baseball is a little tedious, because it is. It's a little slow. I got to tell you, I had both games on last night. I had the NFL and the Little League game, and I kept glancing at the Little League game, and I said, God, they've been playing like an hour and a half, and they're only in the second inning. It's a little slow, and I think I'm happy to see that the black kids are just loving playing baseball, and I hope it's a trend, but I'm not sure. I'm not sold.
Well, Skip, I got a question to pose for you because I thought about this on several occasions over the last few weeks. I think that back in the day when you had, whether it was the Willie Mays, the Vita Blues, the list goes on, just like you said, there was an historical connection. It wasn't just the game itself.
Yep.
It was a game played with an incredible level of pride because Jackie Robinson integrating Major League Baseball in 1947, Larry Doby following him a couple of years later, a year later, it was one of those situations, Skip, where even 10, 15, 20 years later, there was still a level of reverence to those individuals. And not only that, what it meant from a societal perspective, because obviously the NBA, football, the list goes on and on. Ultimately, all of those things would follow. I'm saying to you that along the way, I think money tainted it, because what happened is there became so much money became involved in the sport because they had the most powerful players union.
Yep.
That essentially, when we talk about PC in the modern day era as it pertains to athletes, I would say the ultimate initiator of that were Major League Baseball players, because there was so much money involved.
I agree.
People learned about the business of making money, therefore muzzling the athletes because you could show them the money if you were muzzled. And as a result, the attention to detail about history got lost in the shuffle.
Good
and
point.
as a result of that, it was just about playing the game. And if it's just about playing the game, it ain't as entertaining to a lot of young minds as basketball and football. You felt a responsibility to participate in that sport before. They don't feel that now.
All right, so up next for Jackie Robinson West, they play that Las Vegas team, with the tall kid. Remember that
they
guy
got
who
a
was
couple
6'3"?
of tall kids. Hey, those are some big 13-year-olds.
Yeah, okay, we hope that. Yeah, I'm kidding. Yeah, they're big kids.
A lot of steak and grits.
People have asked me about potentially a two-quarterback system and having a package for them. That is on the table. I don't know if that's anything that we want to commit to just now, because I think Brian, because of the competition, is a little bit behind with the chemistry and the continuity with in working with that first group. So I think that's something that we could potentially look at down the road.
It's something they're looking at potentially down the road.
Oh.
2 days ago, Hoyer was just named the starter, right? And now we're looking down the road. It could be a two-quarterback system. It's on the table. Good idea or bad idea, Bayless?
Stephen A. Smith. Listening just now to Mike Patton, I was having Rex Ryan flashbacks. Here we go again. No, Mike, no. And I remind you, Mike Patton coached and learned under Rex Ryan for 7 years in Baltimore and with the Jets as 3 years his defensive coordinator under Rex Ryan. Here we go again with another defensive coordinator who has no idea how to handle his quarterbacks and his offense. This is just wrong, and it is wrong-headed. I repeat, the oldest football axiom I know is, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. The two-quarterback system is completely unfair to both quarterbacks. We watched Rex go through this with Tebow and Sanchez. I fear we're going to watch him go through this year with Michael Vick and Geno.
Mm-hmm.
I despise the notion of your starting quarterback looking to the sideline and having to say, oh, you want me to come out? I got to run to the sideline so he can come in and run some squirrely wildcat play? Johnny Manziel is not a wildcat kind of quarterback. I'm going to say it again, and God help us, I hope Mike Patton is maybe listening because he might learn a little something. Johnny Manziel is not a running quarterback. You can't call run plays for Johnny. They never did under Cliff Kingsbury during the Heisman Trophy season at Texas A&M. They did not call any running plays for Johnny. Now, he will escape the pass rush occasionally. He'll escape to create time to throw a bomb to Mike Evans for a touchdown. He might run down the field if you dare him to. He might go 15 yards like that before you can even touch him. But you don't call read option plays, spread option plays for Johnny Manziel. You certainly don't call wildcat plays for him. He doesn't do that. Mike Patton, go one way or the other. This is classic case of, I feel strongly both ways. I picked Brian, but I think I should maybe keep Johnny on the back burner. I might give him a few reps. No, you shouldn't. Go one way or the other, coach. Take a stand. Be fair to both quarterbacks.
I'm trying to give Mike Patton a chance here, Skip Bayless, but I can't.
Thank you.
He's embarrassing himself every time he opens his mouth to talk about something on the offensive side of the ball. He seems every bit as lost as Rex Ryan looked 2 years ago when they had Tim Tebow, when they were the 28th ranked offense in the league, when they ranked dead last in the league in yards, when they were, 30th in yards against the pass, 29th in TDs. This is not a team. I mean, Patton was there. He was an eyewitness to this. And he sounds just like Rex Ryan did during that season. Confused, lost, befuddled, and they completely embarrassed themselves with their meltdown of a 6-10 season. It was really that bad. And so for Patton to sit there echoing the same thoughts, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, if I'm Haslam and those boys, I'm incredibly concerned. Because I must admit to you, I have no doubt that Patton knows football. I have no doubt that he's a quality defensive mind. It wasn't all Rex Ryan that was doing those things for the New York Jets, and he had Buffalo's defense looking pretty decent last year. But when this man opens his mouth to talk about offense, he seems completely in over his head. It has not been an impressive training camp / preseason period for the new coach of the Cleveland Browns. I hope for his sake that the regular season is going to be better. Because if he continues to come across as lost as he appears, I think that the Cleveland Browns will be looking for its fourth head coach in the last 4 seasons before it's all said and done.
The Timberwolves' long-anticipated trade to send Kevin Love to the Cavaliers will be completed tomorrow. And according to R. Mark Stein, Minnesota will land Philadelphia's Thaddeus Young in addition to Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett, all a part of a 3-team trade. So when it's all said and done, Stephen A., we're looking into the future. How will we look back at this trade?
Well, I think that depends on how good Andrew Wiggins ends up being. I think that if the Timberwolves end up getting Thaddeus Young, he's a really, really good player. He's not a star, but he's a better than solid player, incredibly athletic, runs the floor, gives a lot of energy, high character guy. I think you look at Andrew Wiggins, the jury is still out. Because, again, if you believe that Andrew Wiggins has the potential to be a star like I do eventually, then you know what? It might pan out. But if you believe like Skip believes, in terms of him being what he is, we all know the handle is suspect, the jump shot is streaky, but relatively suspect as well. It just doesn't simply compare to the 26-12 that Kevin Love put in last year and what he's capable of doing on a night-in, night-out basis, especially playing alongside LeBron James and Kyrie Irving, who I think is inching towards stardom himself. And so, for me, clearly the Cavaliers are getting the better end of this deal. There is no doubt about that. But somewhere along the way, there must be people who have a strong belief in Andrew Wiggins. He was the #1 overall pick in the draft. The thing is, so was Anthony Bennett, and we didn't even discover he could actually play professional basketball until March.
So I believe that history ultimately will conclude that the Cleveland Cavaliers stole Kevin Love. And I get it that in return, the T-Wolves got 2 number-1 overall picks in Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett. And they got the 12th pick in the draft now in Thaddeus Young. And I still don't think it was nearly enough. Again, I'm premature on this. I don't see superstardom. I don't see even Kevin Love kind of stardom in Andrew Wiggins. I hope I'm wrong about that. I don't think I will be. You just summarized what we haven't seen from Anthony Bennett. And Thaddeus Young is a nice player, Stephen A., but I keep reading the stories that he's seen as the replacement for Kevin Love. Seriously? Thaddeus Young has played, this will be his 8th year in the NBA. He's made no all-star teams, and even though last year he averaged 18-6 for the Sixers, they went 19-63 with Thaddeus Young. Was he that big a difference maker? No. So I'm sorry, I don't see enough, and I still don't understand why the Timberwolves didn't hold out longer, even though Kevin Love backed them into a corner and said, I will only sign with Cleveland. Well, you can say, uh-oh, all the leverage then goes to Cleveland. But the T-Wolves could say, well, you want him? You're going to have to wait on him. We want more. You could hold on to him all the way to the trade deadline, onto Kevin Love. You could say, we have to have Kyrie back for him. And you could play chicken with him. I don't know. You could maybe hold out and get a better overall deal than you got, because you need star power for star power, and I just don't think they got proven star power in return.
I still contend with you that they should have made the deal to ship Love to Golden State before all of this went down with LeBron in Cleveland. They really should have done that.
Okay, so they didn't. And once Kevin Love made his proclamation, I will only sign with the Cavaliers, then you can't blame Golden State for taking the deal off the table, because they don't want to rent Kevin Love and have to throw in, what was it, Klay Thompson on top of the rest of the players they were going to have to give, David Lee and Harrison Barnes. Go ahead.
They could have talked. They could have talked all they wanted to, Skip. It's one thing to proclaim you're not going to stay in Minnesota. But had he gotten traded to Golden State, then he would have been in a situation where you're a part of the Golden State squad with a Steph Curry and the rest of the crew, and you got a lot of potential with a better team out there out west. Are you going to leave that to go and make less money in Cleveland? You see, that's the issue here. One thing to leave Minnesota, because a lot of people would be willing to take less to get out of a purgatory-style situation that he felt clearly that he was in.
Okay.
But Golden State is not that scenario.
So now let's turn our sights to the team used to cover, the Philadelphia 76ers. What the heck are they doing? Because, again,
listen,
I love Nerlens Noel. Let me just say, coming off his knee reconstruction, and I'm told it's going very well. He looked good in the summer league. I'm not sure about Embiid's back, but he's going to be a star in this league because I believe it will heal.
Right.
But it's going to be a while. So what are you going to do for a while? I think you're going to be maybe even worse than you were last year, or no better.
I'm not going to go that far. They were 19-63 last year. They went 2 months without winning a game. Went from January 31st to March 29th without winning a single game. They lost 26 straight. They were beyond god-awful. So the reality is that there's nowhere to go for the Sixers but up. What I will say is that the combination of Michael Carter-Williams with Nerlens Noel, with Joel Embiid, assuming that he comes back at some point this upcoming season, I think that they've got a young nucleus in place that people could potentially get excited for because they have size, athleticism, and youth. But it's going to be a long time before they learn how to win, meaning a couple of years or so. But at least we don't anticipate that they'll tank this season the way they clearly tanked last season. The only knock that I would give against Philadelphia is that they're one of the top 5 markets in the country with an incredible basketball tradition. and they had cap space. I have no idea why the Philadelphia 76ers don't go about the business of trying to ingratiate themselves with some of these marquee players to say that Philadelphia should be a marquee destination for people moving forward, considering the cap space that they had. They really need to think big time instead of thinking like second-class citizens, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, and last quick point, of the Popovich assistants that became head coaches, you've got Brett Brown in Philadelphia, who I thought was the more entertaining and personable of the two assistants that got head jobs. And maybe he's in the right place to be personable because you have to sell something. But Budenholzer is the better basketball coach, which is why Atlanta is going to be a dark horse next year and a factor.
Okay.
We think so, but Atlanta's a better situation talent-wise than Philadelphia is right now. Give Brett Brown a chance, but last season can't duplicate itself. You're right about that.
All right, gentlemen, quickly, 5 preseason games tonight. Bears, Seahawks, 10 o'clock. Skip will be hoping for survival. And we're done for now. We'll be back on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2. For Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, I'm Carrie Champion. We hope you have a great weekend.